Hey guys, tonight we slip back into a world of incense smoke, moonlit scrolls, and bubbling potions. You're floating over a warm, humid night in ancient China, somewhere between a sleeping forest and a candlelit monastery. Below you, a group of serious-looking men in layered robes are whispering over a steaming cauldron, arguing whether this glowing goo will make you live forever, or just smell like burnt onions for the rest of your days. You probably won't survive this, but don't worry, that's their problem. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're cozy already, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always lovely to know who's drifting off with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night hums with potential. Crickets chirp in the garden beyond the wooden lattice, and somewhere, a monk is snoring faintly against a pillar. You're nestled in the rafters of a Taoist retreat, watching a scene unfold that will accidentally shape the way the world celebrates almost everything. But for now, nobody's thinking about fireworks. They're thinking about how not to die. It's around the 9th century. You blink slowly as a robed figure holds up a dark little jar and says something like, "This might work." By work, he means granting eternal life, and by this, he means a mixture of ground-up minerals, burned plant ash, and other things that would probably send modern food inspectors into cardiac arrest. The room smells like sulfur, scorched cinnamon, and old parchment. The alchemists are buzzing with excitement, but you already feel the edges of sleep brushing against your mind, because history, even explosive history, can be deeply boring in just the right way. These early alchemists are serious about immortality. Taoist philosophy, with its dreamy blend of balance, nature, and cosmic flow, inspires this obsession. Yin and yang must be harmonized, the 5 elements balanced inside the body. And if that doesn't work, well, there's always mercury soup. They don't see this as reckless. Quite the opposite, this is elite science. You watch as they gently ladle their new creation into tiny porcelain vials, carefully corked and tied with red thread. One monk slips away to deliver a dose to an old nobleman who's still convinced he can outlive all 7 of his sons. Here's the thing, many of these experiments don't do much. Some cause stomach aches. A few give people vivid dreams and then liver failure. And once in a while, someone just explodes. But you'll get there. Tonight's moment is gentle. Outside, the stars shimmer like brushed metal. A nearby river flows lazily, carrying petals from some unseen tree. Inside, there's a sense that the universe might actually be whispering its secrets through smoke. Historians still argue whether these early Taoist practitioners truly believed in physical immortality or if it was more about achieving spiritual harmony and transcendence. Maybe both. Maybe they just wanted a good excuse to avoid taxes and live in mountain temples. Who doesn't? But what's certain is that immortality was a popular hobby. Emperors funded expeditions to find magical mountains. Wealthy patrons paid good money for longevity pills. Even peasants brewed their own lesser elixirs from moss, boiled stones, and crushed animal bones, because you never know. You hover above a cluttered scroll shelf where one manuscript reads like a cooking show transcript but with 400% more mercury. Grind cinnabar, it says, heat it until vapors rise, then cool and drink. It smells like a regretful chemistry class. You feel your eyes droop. Outside, bamboo rustles gently. Inside, another monk adjusts a mixture in the cauldron, muttering about ratios. You wonder if he knows that centuries from now, his experiments will become the basis of fireworks, gunpowder, and maybe a few too many 4th of July injuries. But tonight, it's just about not dying. The air feels thick with hope, uncertainty, and smoke from something called immortal fungus. One man dips a slender reed into the mixture and draws symbols on a copper plate. Another arranges crystals into a pattern that looks suspiciously like a very complicated tic-tac-toe board. The fringe tidbit here. Some alchemists believed you could absorb eternal life through your skin if you bathed in certain magical brews under a full moon while facing east. Preferably while chanting and holding a peach. Ancient skincare meets spiritual direction. A bell rings softly. The room quiets. One old monk places a drop of golden fluid on his tongue. He smiles faintly, then sneezes violently. Everyone nods solemnly. You can't tell if this means it worked. Time passes slowly in the warm night air. You follow the scene like a drifting spirit, watching these earnest men chase an impossible goal. Their robes shimmer faintly in the firelight, and their shadows dance across the stone walls, larger than life. You wonder how many of them will live long enough to realize they've invented something wildly different from what they intended. There's something strangely comforting in their failure. Because sometimes, when you aim for eternity and miss, you get fireworks. You drift a little closer now, ears perked, as hushed voices ripple through the candlelight. The monks are talking shop, heated debates over rare minerals, lunar alignments, and the precise number of deer antlers needed to make a decent immortality pill. One guy insists it's 7. Another swears by 5 and a goat hair infusion. Ancient chemistry is surprisingly catty. These aren't just random hobbyists. They're Taoist alchemists, deeply entwined in the spiritual philosophies of the time. Taoism, if you squint a bit, feels like trying to balance your chakras with a mountain in some wind. It's not about forcing nature, it's about flowing with it, finding harmony, and gently nudging your soul toward enlightenment, preferably while also avoiding death. You hear the phrases they keep repeating: Tao, the way, Qi, life force, Wu Wei, effortless action. Everything has a rhythm. The human body is just another vessel for cosmic order, or disorder, depending on your snack choices and elemental imbalance. Sulfur, they whisper, is one of the divine substances. It's bright, volatile, smells like cursed eggs, and they love it. Saltpeter, scraped painstakingly from compost heaps and cave walls, is another star ingredient. And charcoal, good old burned wood, brings it all together. To you, this might sound like barbecue gone wrong. To them, it's the potential to transcend mortality. It's easy to forget just how mystical everyday elements were back then. You watch a young apprentice grind sulfur with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics. His hands tremble slightly, not because he's afraid of fire, though, yeah, maybe that too, but because these ingredients are sacred. They represent transformation. Earth becoming energy. Matter unlocking spirit. Outside, frogs croak near the lotus pond. A lantern flickers and hisses in the damp air. You see the senior monk, beard like cascading clouds, laying out a chart of the 5 phases: wood, fire, earth, metal, water. Every substance must align with this cosmic model. If your potion lacks fire, add cinnamon bark. Too much metal. Maybe a splash of fermented rice wine. Historians still argue whether these elemental classifications were purely symbolic or also a proto-scientific attempt to categorize matter. Either way, it's equal parts philosophy, trial and error, and vibes. And vibes matter, especially when you're trying to live forever. Now, here's your quirky tidbit: some texts advised consuming powdered jade to nourish the soul. As if swallowing a crushed luxury watch could somehow make your inner energy glow. You can practically feel your kidneys side-eyeing you from the future. The Taoist goal wasn't just long life, it was immortal resonance. Imagine becoming so attuned to the cosmos that you just stop aging. No death, no decay, just you, vibing forever on a cloud, maybe turning into a crane or a mountain if that's your thing. The alchemists didn't fear death like modern mortals do. For them, it was just an annoying spiritual detour. You want to stay here, in the flesh, with your garden and tea and scroll collection. You're not done meditating. You haven't written your 3rd poetry anthology yet. Immortality wasn't selfish, it was practical. And the emperors loved this idea. They'd send expeditions to find magical islands. They'd build entire palaces just for potion research. One emperor, Qin Shi Huang, the original overachiever, allegedly died from mercury pills designed to make him live forever. Whoops. You float through a small archive where scrolls are drying on racks, covered in calligraphy so delicate it looks like it could evaporate. Recipes for eternal youth. Lists of ingredients. Warnings like, may induce mild floating, and, avoid sunlight after ingestion. Some of these formulas would later morph into medicine, perfume, or very cursed snacks. But it's the mood that gets you. Everyone in this space is so calm. No one's rushing. If it takes 50 years to craft the perfect elixir, so be it. You've got time. You're planning on having infinite time, after all. Someone coughs. A mild fizzle from the cauldron turns into a puff of greenish smoke. Everyone leans in, hopeful. The mixture sizzles, then calms. Not a breakthrough, but not a failure. That's enough for tonight. They gather the ash into small lacquer boxes, each one labeled with a poem. Soul like dew. Heaven's breath. Dragon's milk, which sounds like a medieval energy drink but is probably crushed shellfish mixed with ginseng. You wander outside now, past a small shrine where offerings glimmer in the moonlight, candied dates, pine needles, a coin shaped like a peach. There's a sense of quiet dedication here, like a very serious camping trip that's been going on for 200 years. Even the animals seem to play along. A fox watches from the underbrush, totally not suspicious at all. Somewhere above, a bat flutters past, reminding you that in Chinese culture, bats are symbols of good luck and longevity. Because of course they are. As you float back toward the main chamber, you realize these alchemists are doing something oddly beautiful. They're trying to turn life into art. Their tools are weird. Their logic is, generously, questionable. But their hope. It's incandescent. In the corner, one apprentice sketches something in charcoal on a bit of parchment. It's a diagram of ingredients, sulfur, saltpeter, charcoal, all balanced around a central symbol. He labels it, heavenly fire. You pause. That's not a healing potion. That's something else. But we'll get to that soon. For now, you sink deeper into the warm night air, soothed by the gentle hissing of embers and the slow, steady breathing of dreamers chasing impossible dreams. You slide back into the thick haze of incense and roasted herbs. The alchemists haven't left their workstations. If anything, the fumes are stronger tonight, clinging to your skin like spiritual cobwebs. The room vibrates softly with chanting, low, rhythmic syllables meant to encourage the ingredients to behave. Or at least not combust too violently. You drift lower, inspecting a cluttered stone workbench. There's a mix of iron tools, delicate brushes, hollow bamboo tubes, and, wait, is that dried lizard tail? Oh yes. You've entered the spice cabinet of immortality, where every item has an absurdly specific purpose and a vaguely ominous smell. The air is so thick with sulfur you feel like you've wandered into an ancient egg salad convention. A young monk fans a bubbling cauldron with a paper fan covered in tiny dragons. Another adds something that looks suspiciously like scorched cinnamon and a pinch of what he calls moon ash, which is probably just dirt blessed under starlight, but hey, it's the vibe that matters. This lab isn't sterile or quiet like modern science labs. It's messy. It's loud. The fire crackles unevenly. Cats slink between jars. Scrolls are tacked up next to herbs drying on strings. In the background, someone sneezes violently, likely due to a mix of chili powder and divine radiance. The goal tonight? Refine a golden elixir. You hover over the table where one senior monk is attempting to melt real gold and mix it with crushed pearls and lotus resin. He believes this will infuse the body with celestial harmony. You believe it will probably infuse the intestines with regret. Historians still argue whether these golden elixirs were meant for physical ingestion or symbolic offerings to the divine. Given that many included arsenic and mercury, your guess leans toward symbolic, hopefully. Or maybe just wishful thinking. And yet, the devotion is real. One monk writes the character for life in the ashes before adding his mixture. Another whispers blessings in a dialect so old it sounds like the wind is mumbling. There's a delicate sense of reverence for even the messiest failure. But not all failures are quiet. In the corner of the room, someone's experiment begins to fizz. Not the gentle, almost ready to serve, kind of fizz. This is the, your eyebrows might not survive, variety. You drift closer. The mixture bubbles violently, emitting sparks. There's a pause. Everyone leans in. Then, bang. A small explosion sends scrolls flying and knocks over a jar of fermented scorpion vinegar. Silence. Then coughing. Then laughter. You catch the smile on one monk's face. It's not disappointment, it's curiosity. That little blast was not the elixir of life, but it was something. Something powerful. Something dramatic. The term huiyao, fire medicine, is scrawled hastily in the notebook. It won't mean fireworks just yet, but it's headed there. Here's a quirky detail: some Taoist texts actually advise that if your potion exploded, it was a sign of overexcitement in the spirit realm. In other words, the gods are totally into it. Keep going. You glide past shelves stacked with jars of saltpeter scraped from animal pens and charcoal made from carefully selected peach trees. Sulfur, ground by hand until it clings to every surface like a curse, gives the whole place a lemony funk. These three ingredients, combined in the right way, can lift a soul, or blast a roof. And here's where the story wobbles beautifully: this wasn't about violence. Not yet. These ingredients were being tested as part of a spiritual quest. A medicine. A bomb. And then, every so often, an accidental pyrotechnic tantrum. You lean in to see a monk documenting tonight's results. His calligraphy is elegant, despite the ink stain on his nose. The notes red, glows green. Startled cat. Burns hot. May alter path of chi. Outside, the temple gong sounds faintly. You glide to the courtyard, where another group is meditating by moonlight. Their faces are serene. Somewhere in the background, a muffled thud suggests someone else's batch just got a little too harmonious with fire. The thing is, no one gives up. They adjust ratios. They pray harder. They roast new roots. And always, the dream remains, to refine something pure enough, balanced enough, divine enough to turn death into an option. And still, historians debate whether this was medicine, mysticism, or just really enthusiastic amateur chemistry. Maybe all three. Maybe it doesn't matter when the goal is so cosmic. You hover over a page filled with diagrams, circles within circles, lines connecting stars to body parts. It's a cosmological circuit board. The alchemists believe the body is a reflection of the universe. To alter one is to change the other. A sip of the right mixture might realign your organs and the constellations. You pause on a note in the margin: if taken during eclipse, elixir strength doubled. Probably not true. But definitely poetic. There's something beautifully human in the way they cling to patterns. Fire represents transformation. Gold represents purity. Water balances fire. You can almost hear the whispered logic as you float past another bubbling pot. Maybe just a little more dragon bone. One final fringe practice tonight: an elixir made from deer antler, goji berries, and powdered turtle shell, administered while listening to flute music near a waterfall. The idea? The sound frequencies help the potion resonate properly. You imagine future scientists watching this and quietly sobbing. But tonight, none of that matters. Tonight, it's about wonder. You drift above a room filled with smoke, sparks, and faith. And somewhere deep in the back corner of a wooden shelf, forgotten for now, sits a little jar of leftover powder. It doesn't heal. It doesn't purify. But if you light it, it just might dance. You glide down again into the flickering light, back into that same cramped room that now smells even more like a haunted spice rack. The walls are dark with soot stains. Someone's installed a new window, probably after the last surprise enlightenment event. You float past the cauldron, the scroll racks, and a pile of rags that may or may not be ancient first aid supplies. Tonight's focus is subtle, distillation. Not of alcohol, though, fun fact, that'll become an accidental byproduct of alchemy too, but of spirit, substance, and intention. The monks are trying to isolate the purest form of an ingredient. Not necessarily the strongest, but the one that harmonizes perfectly with the flow of qi. If you're imagining them listening to their cauldrons like musical tuning forks, that's not far off. You hover near an older alchemist, face lined like cracked porcelain, who's gently boiling a mixture of realgar, arsenic sulfide, honey, and bits of ginseng. He leans over the bubbling brew and mutters something like, "Just one more breath of heaven." You sincerely hope he's not planning to drink it. Here's the kicker, many believe that toxicity could be spiritually purifying. That ingesting something deadly in small enough doses would burn away the mortal impurities of the body. Mercury, arsenic, lead, if your blood wasn't a cocktail of danger, were you even trying? Historians still argue whether these dangerous materials were meant to be consumed often or in single ritual doses under strict supervision. The truth likely varies by region, century, and how recently someone had blown their eyebrows off. You float beside a set of ancient notes pinned with wooden needles. The paper is thin and fragile, the ink blotted with age. The recipe reads like a medieval dare. 3 parts dragon bone. 2 parts realgar. 1 part soot from sacred incense. Mix under starlight. Consume during planetary alignment. Even now, you can't tell if it's medicine or a very intense horoscope. As you watch, a novice pours the finished mixture into a delicate blue bowl and offers it to the temple's spiritual leader. The elder monk takes a sip and smiles. No fainting. No fireballs. Just a quiet nod. Somewhere, a cricket chirps in approval. But not every batch ends in bliss. You glance over at a second workspace where someone is trying to fuse cinnabar with heated rice wine. The mixture spits, hisses, and turns an angry shade of purple. The monk stares at it, then calmly dumps the whole pot into a barrel of sand. Everyone politely pretends not to cheer. Still, the rhythm of the place continues. Grind, boil, chant. Write, whisper, mix. Every moment feels sacred, part scientific lab, part church kitchen. One monk carefully ladles his latest attempt into small ceramic tubes, then seals them with wax. He writes the name of the concoction on a silk tag, Heart of the Phoenix. A little dramatic, but points for branding. Here's your quirky tidbit of the night, some Taoist alchemists believed that successful elixirs could sing. Literally. If a potion was made in perfect harmony with the universe, it might emit a faint tone when completed, usually during a full moon or right after the second rooster crow. No pressure. And speaking of sound, listen. There's a new tone in the air, a sharper, higher-pitched crackling. Someone just tested a small sample of fire medicine outside, hoping the sparks meant divine approval. Instead, it startled a mule and set someone's laundry on fire. Modest success. You drift to the edge of the temple grounds, where older monks walk slowly in quiet circles, discussing the results. The balance is nearly there, one says. But it lacks heat. Perhaps more sulfur, another mutters, stroking his beard like it holds secret equations. It's all part of the dance. This isn't just chemistry, it's a cosmic waltz. Fire and water. Metal and wood. Heaven and earth. Everything has a role. And somewhere in the middle of all this, someone is going to stumble across a compound that does more than just promise long life. They're going to invent combustion. You slip into a side room where scrolls are being copied by candlelight. A young apprentice yawns and dips his brush into ink, then adds a note to a growing index. Combination of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal produced sustained sparks. No fanfare. Just that. A sleepy afterthought that will eventually alter warfare, celebration, and birthday parties forever. But tonight, it's just another scribble in the dark. You pass a shelf lined with rejected elixirs, each in a unique container, some lacquered wood, some polished jade. Too bitter, one reads. Causes mild levitation, says another. And then there's a jar simply labeled NO. It's easy to forget that all of this, the explosions, the poison, the powdered dreams, comes from a place of gentleness. Of longing. The monks don't want power. They want peace. They want to make the body light enough to float through heaven. To outlive suffering. To become more spirit than flesh. But they're also getting really, really good at making stuff go boom. The fire crackles again. Someone adjusts a balance scale. A nearby student snoozes against a pile of pine bark. Outside, the stars shift above the misty trees. And somewhere, in a dark jar nestled in straw, a little lump of mixed powder waits patiently. Its destiny. To light the sky. But for now, it sleeps, like everything else in this quiet, dreaming place. You slip into a new evening, and the mood in the alchemy chamber has changed. There's a quiet hum of anticipation in the air, more excitement than usual, like someone's birthday is coming and no one wants to admit they know. The usual smell of charcoal and aged herbs lingers, but now it's tinged with something sharper. More metallic. More volatile. Tonight, you're not just witnessing potion making. You're here for the first whispers of fire medicine becoming something else. Something fun. Something dangerous. Something pretty. One monk, let's call him the enthusiastic one, is adjusting his mix of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. He's not thinking about immortality tonight. He's thinking about reaction. Controlled explosion. Showmanship, even. You watch him pour his blend into a slender bamboo tube, corked at one end and sealed with wax at the other. It's a rough prototype, equal parts science and superstition. He lights a taper and leans in. You might want to hover back a little. The fire creeps along the fuse, hisses, then, phwof. A blast of sparks erupts into the sky like a startled phoenix. It doesn't go far, but it's bright. And loud. The monks shout and scatter, one of them clutching his prayer beads like they've just seen the second coming of Lousy. No one calls it a firework yet. That word doesn't exist. But a seed is planted. The thing is, they weren't trying to make that happen. Not exactly. They were experimenting with combustion as a spiritual metaphor, fire representing transformation, smoke ascending to heaven as a literal act of communication with the divine. The resulting pop. That was just an added surprise. Historians still argue whether these early fire medicines were first used for religious rituals or military applications. Some think the colorful blast was intended to scare away evil spirits. Others argue it was just a happy mistake, until someone realized it also scared away bandits. You hover near the scorched patch of ground where the first bamboo rocket just erupted. The monk who made it is already scribbling adjustments in his notebook, thicker casing. Add stabilizer. Reduce charcoal. There's a spark in his eyes, pun very much intended. In another corner of the compound, an older monk frowns at the excitement. He's from the elixirs only school of thought. No noise. No fireworks. Just slow, careful blending of elements to extend life and balance spirit. But even he can't deny there's something energizing about the new discoveries. Something invigorating. Like the universe is giving them a wink. Outside the temple walls, word spreads. Other monasteries begin tinkering with the saltpeter mix. Not all of them use it responsibly. In a neighboring province, a traveling healer accidentally sets a storage shed on fire. The flames were reportedly beautiful but incredibly inconvenient. Saltpeter, now known as potassium nitrate, becomes a bit of a buzzword in alchemical circles. Extracted from soil, dung heaps, and decaying animal matter, it's not glamorous, but it works. And when combined just right, it behaves more like a conversation with the cosmos than a science experiment. A quirky detail: some alchemists start using turtle shells as mixing bowls, believing the shell's natural pattern enhances cosmic energy flow. Others begin painting symbols onto their mixtures before ignition: dragons for strength, cranes for longevity, fireflies for illumination. You float near one such experiment now. A monk has shaped a clay mold in the image of a lotus flower. He fills each petal with slightly different compositions. The idea? To create a blossoming fire pattern when lit. It's part performance, part offering. When the flame is finally applied, it doesn't quite bloom, it sputters, spins, and lets out a tragic little flump. Still, the monk beams. Progress, he whispers. The community begins to divide, not in hostility, but in focus. Some continue the quest for internal alchemy, for potions that promise health, longevity, and harmony. Others lean into the external magic: explosions, light, spectacle. You're watching a spiritual practice slowly pivot into entertainment and engineering. One night, you glide over a celebration honoring a local deity. Paper lanterns float in the air. Music hums softly through the streets. And then, someone lights a small tube and sends it spinning into the sky. It cracks like thunder and showers red sparks over the river. Everyone cheers. Children scream in delight. The gods, one assumes, are flattered. From this moment on, fire medicine has a dual purpose: to awe and to warn. It becomes both celebration and signal. The same tube that dazzles a crowd tonight could frighten off a raiding party tomorrow. The monks don't know it yet, but they've just stumbled into an arms race. Still, in this era, everything is still handcrafted, sacred, and laced with intent. You pass a scroll titled The Harmonious Explosion. It includes a diagram of a lotus flower with arrows pointing outward, and a footnote that reads, "Use only on solstice or with divine permission." By now, the recipe is fairly stable: 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, 10% sulfur. This golden ratio will stick around for centuries. But it's not just about the math. It's about rhythm, instinct, timing. Mix it wrong, and it fizzles, or detonates prematurely. Mix it right, and you've got light in a bottle. A novice stirs a fresh batch under the moonlight. He sings to it, believing that the right melody will guide the elements into balance. His voice is shaky, but sweet. The mixture puffs once, then settles. He grins. You do too. And here's something modern minds often forget: these weren't scientists in the modern sense. They didn't separate magic from chemistry, or physics from prayer. To them, a perfect combustion was as much a blessing as it was a reaction. So when a particularly bold alchemist carves a dragon's head onto the end of a fire tube and shoots a glowing tail into the sky, he's not just making a pretty noise. He's summoning a spirit. You drift up, higher now, past the roof of the temple where smoke curls gently into the evening air. Below, laughter echoes. Another blast pops, this one blue-tinged. The monks cheer again, some of them pretending they're not completely thrilled. Somewhere on a shelf, a small label reads, "Fire medicine, handle with awe." You watch it flicker. It winks back. You wake, or rather, drift, back into a moment that smells unmistakably like singed bamboo and nervous sweat. The monks are setting up something new tonight. Bigger. Taller. Louder. They're calling it Sky Flower. It's their boldest experiment yet in the realm of fire medicine, and honestly, it's got the energy of someone lighting a match while saying, "I think this'll be fine." A bamboo tube the length of a grown man's arm stands upright in a clay pot, its base packed with sand for stability. A fuse snakes from the top like a suspiciously confident wick of destiny. You're not the only one hovering nervously, even the squirrels in the nearby tree seem to have taken cover. You remember how we got here, how monks searching for immortality somehow ended up creating the first version of a bottle rocket. What started as a medicinal pursuit, distilling the essence of divine harmony into drinkable form, has now taken a sharp, sparkly detour into kinetic energy and surprise bangs. The word longevity is beginning to take on a rather ironic tone. Still, there's a method in the madness. The proportions of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal are dialed in now. Monks begin to experiment not just with the composition of the mixture, but with containment and direction. They're realizing something fascinating: powder that explodes outward makes a mess. Powder that explodes upward makes a spectacle. One particularly inventive monk, clearly channeling his inner stage designer, has fashioned several tubes angled in different directions, his own primitive version of a fireworks display. His name, scribbled in one account, may have been Wei Yong, or possibly Wei Yao. The records are vague. He lights the central fuse. You might want to cover your ears. PFFFF boom. Sparks shoot in a V-shape. The crowd gasps. One monk bursts into applause, then quickly pretends he was swatting away smoke. Another says, "It's too showy," but he's smiling. You see it. Still, not everyone's sold on this new path. Some argue that fire medicine should be reserved strictly for ritual and protection. Using it to delight a crowd, they say, risks trivializing the divine. Others counter, what's more divine than joy? Then awe? Then a literal cascade of light from the heavens? Historians still argue whether this divide in philosophy eventually contributed to different branches of alchemical study, one veering toward medicine and inner cultivation, the other toward spectacle, warfare, and engineering. The split might not have been dramatic, but it was decisive. In a corner of the courtyard, a more stoic monk is quietly sketching designs. His scroll shows a series of arrows, yes, literal arrows, with small tubes of powder strapped to them. This isn't entertainment. This is innovation. Military innovation. The fire arrow is born. Now this, ironically, may have come from a defensive desire to protect the temple grounds. Early raids from rival sects and roaming bandits had monks thinking, how do we make our spiritual enlightenment more flammable? A flaming arrow is intimidating. A flaming arrow with propulsion is terrifying. You peer over the monk's shoulder. His notes are meticulous: weight balance, angle of release, burn rate of fuse. His hands tremble slightly, not from fear, but reverence. He's not making a weapon. He's composing a hymn in spark and flame. A little further down the trail, you float past a makeshift testing range. Targets made of hay and padded cloth wait at a respectful distance. A novice readies the fire arrow, aiming it with great care. The fuse is lit. And then, whip, it streaks through the dusk like a furious comet, hits the target, and bursts in a puff of white flame. The monks collectively inhale. One mutters, "That was beautiful." Another replies, "Yes, but imagine if it hit your rice store." Therein lies the dilemma. Beauty and destruction are twins in this moment of history. The same powder can cause a miracle or a fire hazard. Or both. A quirky note tucked into a dusty side journal mentions an experiment involving hollowed-out fruit shells filled with powder, launched from slingshots. They were called star apples. The goal? To create airborne bursts without the hard shrapnel. The result? Half the fruit exploded on launch. The rest just fell apart mid-air and mildly annoyed a goat. You glide onward, watching how fire medicine spreads beyond the temple walls. Traveling performers begin to hear rumors. A wandering magician offers to summon dragons for a village celebration. Code 4, I have a spark tube and very few boundaries. In time, these demonstrations become expected at festivals. Lantern festivals. New Year. Weddings. The roar of powder becomes a kind of punctuation, marking time, transition, celebration. When something explodes in color and noise, it's like the universe clapping. And here's your scholarly morsel of the night. Some historians believe the incorporation of fire medicine into festivals was a strategic decision by temple authorities. By wrapping sacred knowledge in the cloak of entertainment, they could share wonder without revealing secrets. Others think it was just plain fun, and who were they to gatekeep joy? Meanwhile, in secret, the more martial-minded alchemists refine their methods. Fire arrows become more precise. Larger, thunderclap tubes are developed, what we might call early grenades. The powder's destructive potential is no longer an accident. It's a feature. Still, the monks hold on to duality. For every design meant for battle, there's one meant for beauty. A wheel of fire that spins like a celestial map. A ground-based spark fountain that resembles the blooming of a chrysanthemum. Someone paints the side of a canister with the character for peace. You hover beside one final scroll, fresh with ink. It reads. The way of the powder reflects the way of the Tao. Too much force and it devours. Just enough, and it ascends. The night winds down. Embers fade. A novice sweeps up ashes with the same reverence used for prayer. The stars above twinkle like distant fireworks, quietly applauding human curiosity. And in the shadows, a small pile of bamboo tubes sits waiting. Not for war. Not for medicine. Just for wonder. You drift away, trailing a bit of sulfur-sweet air behind you. Sleepy now, even the fire rests. You wander into a quieter moment, if quiet can still hum with the charge of 1,000 failed experiments and the scent of burnt everything. It's not a festival night. Not a demonstration. It's one of those middle-of-the-week evenings where the monks are deep in trial and error mode, which in alchemy is really just glorified guesswork with better calligraphy. Someone's been trying to make a quieter fire tube. Not for subtlety, he just lives next to the temple rooster and would very much like to sleep past dawn. His new mixture fizzes instead of popping, and he logs it as a partial success, but emotionally unsatisfying. You nod in agreement. Tonight, your attention shifts to the evolving tools of the trade. Because while fire medicine has largely been about the mix, the saltpeter, sulfur, charcoal magic, it's now becoming about containment and delivery. You're witnessing the transformation of fire medicine from experiment to instrument. Let's talk tubes. The earliest containers were simple, hollow bamboo. It's abundant, strong enough, and if it bursts, no one's surprised. But bamboo has a pesky habit of splitting unpredictably. One too many splinters later, the monks start experimenting with hardened paper casings. Paper, after all, is another Chinese invention they've already mastered. So now you have scrolls and shells, papercraft and pyrotechnics, call it the original paper jam. The design evolves quickly. Instead of lighting powder in open pits or crudely sealed bamboo, the monks begin layering paper cylinders, winding string around them, and sealing both ends with clay or wax. These are no longer just containers, they're precision instruments. You float past one such workstation, where an elder monk murmurs blessings as he rolls each paper shell. Not for superstition, well, okay, also for superstition, but mostly because tradition demands reverence. The tubes are now being categorized. You hear murmurs of names, sky flowers, dragon teeth, whistling demons. Each has a different fuse length, burst style, and purpose. Some are meant to dazzle, others to frighten. One monk describes a sound effect as, like the thunder of a fox spirit being mildly offended. No one knows what that means, but everyone agrees it's accurate. Historians still argue whether these naming conventions were symbolic, poetic, or a form of covert coding, ways of disguising military tech as art. The truth is probably yes to all three. You're standing at a crossroads where religion, entertainment, and warfare all share a campfire. One fringe monk, let's call him Lu the Literal, begins documenting the angle of ascent and descent of each fire tube he tests. He starts charting trajectory against moon phases, claiming better bursts during waxing crescents. His colleagues mostly ignore this, until he gets it right 3 nights in a row. Now he's got a chart, a line graph, and one smug eyebrow permanently raised. You find a half-burned scroll detailing the principles of lift. It's full of arrows, swirls, and the phrase, "ignite with dignity," underlined 3 times. It's less science textbook, more philosophy workbook with occasional fire hazards. Still, you see the early bones of engineering here, an understanding that this isn't just explosive powder. It's propulsion. Elsewhere, some monks are playing with color. They begin adding minerals to the powder mix. A little copper makes green. Strontium compounds produce red. One curious soul adds dried beetroot. The resulting effect is less vibrant crimson and more smoky sadness, but you respect the hustle. A quirky experiment involves crushing beetles into the mix, hoping that the natural luminescence of the insects might infuse the sparks. The only result is a nasty smell and a vow to stick to minerals going forward. Nature, it turns out, has limits. Still, the search for color becomes a new obsession. The monks don't just want light, they want art. They want flowers in the sky, dragons coiling in flame, suns bursting from canisters. Someone sculpts a tiny clay phoenix, places it atop a tube, and tries to launch it as a symbolic offering. It flops over and lightly singes the grass, but in theory, beautiful. You drift through a workshop where someone has started stacking tubes into vertical layers. Multi-stage rockets. The idea is to launch one, have it explode mid-air, and trigger a second burst. It's wildly unreliable. Most of them go off all at once, terrifying chickens within a 5-mile radius. But when it works, you get a burst within a burst, like a flower blooming inside another flower. A tiny monk with soot-smudged cheeks whispers to you, well, technically he's talking to himself, but you're the only one listening. It's not just fire medicine anymore. It's sky writing. The phrase sticks with you. Because what you're watching is no longer about scaring spirits or protecting granaries. This is theater. Each tube is a monologue. Each burst a finale. Fireworks are becoming a form of expression. And expression needs direction. So the fuse game levels up. Early fuses were just rope dipped in slow-burning oil. But now, braided fuses. Twisted twine with embedded powder strands. Variable timing. You see a chart mapping burn lengths against humidity levels and air temperature. It's about precision now, about building suspense, about pacing a show. Of course, it wouldn't be alchemy without a bit of drama. One monk, determined to create a 12-second delay fuse for a mid-air dragon burst, ends up inventing what we now call a complete accident. His fuse burns at double speed, ignites everything on the prep table, and launches 3 unfinished tubes into a nearby tree. The monks declare it a new omen. The tree, for its part, seems unimpressed. You notice another evolution, the staging area. Fire displays now require distance. Bamboo screens are erected, not just for aesthetics, but to separate monk from missile. Wind direction is tested with strips of silk. You hear someone say, "No more sideways phoenixes, please." It's all getting bigger. Not just the tubes, but the ideas behind them. What began as an accidental bang in a dusty lab is becoming a whole genre. A language of light. And while the monks still chant before every launch, you get the sense that even they know, they've started speaking in sparks now. You float back, embers trailing through the air, and land gently beside a box labeled, "Do not light without supervision." Inside, a scroll, a fuse, a handful of neatly rolled tubes. Someone's prepping for next week's display. You smile. Even in ancient China, you can feel it, the irresistible pull of curiosity and chaos. The air tonight tastes like patience and something slightly metallic. You glide into a courtyard dimly lit by oil lamps, their flickering flames pale imitations of what you know the monks are working on in secret. You're starting to notice that fire medicine is no longer just a curiosity, it's becoming a discipline. And disciplines come with rules, hierarchies, even paperwork. You hover near a table where a bald monk with a scowl more permanent than his ink stains is inscribing what appears to be a set of guidelines. The 12 necessary precautions of powder handling, the scroll says, and in the margin, someone's drawn a tiny doodle of a man being comically launched backward by an explosion. Even in 10th century China, sarcasm thrives. He's not wrong to be cautious. A recent explosion in the Northwest Garden, which was meant to demonstrate a gentle smoke blossom and instead produced a crater and 3 temporarily deaf monks, has led the temple elders to finally put their sandals down. From now on, no powder mixing without supervision. No lighting fuses indoors. And absolutely no experimenting after evening tea. You drift over to a set of storage containers lined neatly against a stone wall. Each jar is labeled with a character: sulfur, charcoal, saltpeter. One has a skull symbol drawn in chalk, charming. This is the first inkling of what we might recognize today as safety protocols. Or, more realistically, the first time someone said, "Let's not die today." Historians still argue whether these safety practices were formalized temple-wide or just observed by the more cautious sects. Some sources claim entire monastic orders broke off over disagreements about mixing methods. Others suggest the more cavalier monks simply got themselves exploded out of the discussion. You trail through a narrow hallway lined with scrolls, and for the first time, you see proper documentation. Experiment logs. Observations of powder ratios, wind direction, humidity. One entry reads, 5 parts charcoal, 3 parts sulfur, 8 parts saltpeter, result, pleasing whoosh, minor grass fire. Another, less optimistic, says, tried reversal of sulfur and saltpeter. Immediate combustion. Lost 2 eyebrows. Spiritual growth imminent. It's not just about preventing accidents anymore. It's about repeatability. The monks want results they can depend on. You're witnessing a shift from mystical fumbling to scientific thinking, well, proto-scientific, let's be fair. There's still a bit of, pray it doesn't explode before I finish writing this sentence, baked in. And yet, you can't help but admire the ambition. One monk is charting powder density versus lift height. Another is working on a pulley system to launch multiple tubes simultaneously. You pause as 2 novices conduct a synchronized test. 1 spark, 4 tubes, a perfect fan of fire. The courtyard cheers softly. Even a nearby cat lifts its head in approval. There's a fringe story, barely preserved in temple gossip, that one monk tried to use fire tubes to propel a small cart forward. Like a rocket sled. The cart was fine. The ground was not. The monk, according to rumor, said, "I have learned everything I needed to know," and never spoke of it again. That desire to harness fire for motion doesn't disappear, though. You sense it lingering. Quiet murmurs about carriages of air and cloud chariots begin to pop up in the margins of more experimental scrolls. They're still centuries away from actual rockets, but the seed has been planted. You watch as another monk crafts a new kind of casing, layered paper glued with rice paste, then wrapped with thin copper wire to control expansion. This is no longer just about the fire. It's about the choreography. Timing. Shape. Predictability. It's becoming mechanical. You spot what appears to be an early version of a timing mechanism, 2 fuses twisted together, with wax layers of differing thickness. The goal? To delay ignition based on melt time. It mostly works. On a good day. On a bad day, it just melts everything and smokes like a very confused dragon. Still, it's progress. And so, quietly, the monks begin creating what might be the world's first firework manuals. Not just notes, but guides. Instructional diagrams. Best practices. Warnings, of course. Do not face sky flower downward. Never blow on fuse. If unsure whether it is lit, it is. You can practically hear the weary tone in those brushstrokes. Scholars still debate whether these manuals were shared between temples or kept tightly guarded. Some believe traveling monks carried them in hidden compartments within their robes, passing them only to trusted brethren. Others argue they were open knowledge by then, considered part of the broader alchemical education. You peek at a particularly thick scroll titled On the Harmonious Construction of Celestial Powder Forms. The cover is serious. The contents? Delightfully chaotic. Doodles of bursting spheres, spiraling sparks, upward arcs. A margin note reads, "Add more saltpeter." The stars demand it. It's here that you see the balance forming. The strict rules of safety don't stifle creativity, they channel it. Fire medicine isn't just spectacle or danger anymore. It's an art, and like any art, it needs technique. The workshop grows quieter. Wax seals dry. Scrolls are rolled with care and bound with twine. A junior monk snuffs out the last oil lamp, whispering a soft apology to the fire for putting it to sleep. And you? You float upward into the night, past the storage jars and safety scrolls, the half-charred test tubes and the "do not launch while fasting" signs. You've seen something shift. This isn't wild experimentation anymore. This is refinement. A craft learning its own grammar. The monks might not be immortal yet, but they've invented something that feels like it wants to last forever. You find yourself drifting through a garden where the scent of drying herbs mingles with faint wisp-like trails of smoke curling from scattered test fires. It's late, and the temple's quieter now, but you can hear the faint murmur of a debate stirring among a small group of monks. They're gathered around a wooden table cluttered with bamboo tubes, charcoal dust, and a few brittle scrolls. The conversation: how to control the unpredictability of fire medicine, because if there's one thing this whole journey has taught you, it's that unpredictability can be both enchanting and devastating. The question on the table: how to make the explosions safer, more reliable, and most importantly, more spectacular. This is the moment when fire medicine starts transforming into a carefully crafted art form. One monk suggests refining the quality of saltpeter, the key ingredient that controls combustion speed. He explains how purer saltpeter burns cleaner, offering brighter sparks and less smoke. Another counters with a more philosophical argument: perhaps the smoke is part of the spectacle, a dance of the unseen, he says poetically. You smile, ancient smoke poetry. A bit niche, but it has its charm. Historians still argue whether these debates were purely practical or part of a larger spiritual framework. Some records hint that monks believed the smoke's shape and movement carried messages from the heavens, while others focus on the tangible benefits of purer powder. Maybe both are true. After all, this is ancient China, where science and spirituality often dance cheek to cheek. Nearby, a novice monk experiments with the thickness of paper shells, realizing that a thinner casing leads to sharper bursts but risks premature explosions. Thicker shells contain the force better, creating louder booms but sometimes muffling the visual effect. It's a delicate balance, and you can almost feel the tension in the room: too much bang, and you lose beauty; too little, and it's just a sad little puff. One particularly curious monk takes a break from the fiery debates to demonstrate a small, ground spinner, an early type of firework that twirls and spits sparks while rooted to the earth. It's mesmerizing in its simplicity, a slow pirouette of sparks that demands patience and a calm gaze. You watch, hypnotized by the spinning lights, imagining the soft crackle sound lulling a village to sleep centuries from now. In a side room, a collection of drawings catches your eye. They're designs for multi-stage rockets, ideas of rockets that would ignite one after the other in a sequence, creating cascading bursts of color and noise. The engineering is rudimentary but bold. One sketch shows a rocket shaped like a lotus, complete with petal-like bursts. Another depicts dragons chasing each other in spirals of flame. You realize these images are not just technical diagrams but also a glimpse into the imagination fueling these alchemical experiments. Quirky side note, a lesser-known manuscript suggests a monk tried adding powdered pearls to the mix, hoping to achieve shimmering white sparks. The result? An underwhelming fizz and a ruined robe, but the effort underscores the relentless creativity and willingness to experiment that defines this period. You overhear whispers about sky dragons and fire serpents, terms used to describe early attempts at choreographing fireworks in patterns. The idea of telling stories in the sky is emerging, although how much of this was formalized choreography versus happy accidents remains a topic of scholarly debate. As the night deepens, you notice the monk's workshop gradually shifts from chaotic testing to an almost ritualized precision. Each step is carefully recorded, each experiment meticulously noted. The air is thick with anticipation and a hint of sulfur, the scent of human ingenuity in motion. You leave the courtyard with one final thought: the alchemists, despite their initial quest for immortality, have accidentally crafted a fleeting kind of eternity, moments of dazzling light that live on in memory long after the powder burns out. The soft glow of dawn begins to filter through paper windows as you drift into a quiet corner of the temple where something unexpected is unfolding. Here, the alchemists are not just mixing powders or launching primitive rockets, they're crafting experiences. The festival season approaches, and with it, the desire to turn fleeting explosions into shared moments of wonder. You watch as a group of monks gathers around a long scroll, debating how best to arrange fireworks for an upcoming celebration. The stakes feel surprisingly high, as if this event will cement their legacy, or at least avoid another accidental fire. The head monk insists on order, sketching carefully measured intervals between launches. His assistant advocates for unpredictability, arguing that surprise is the essence of joy. You feel the tension between control and chaos, a dance that mirrors the very nature of fire medicine itself. Meanwhile, another team experiments with colors. Mixing copper compounds for green sparks, strontium for reds, barium for pale greens, and even hints of indigo derived from plant dyes. Some combinations fail spectacularly, producing dull gray smoke or simply fizzing out, while others burst into brilliant cascades of color that light the stone walls with shimmering hues. A fringe experiment involves tossing crushed pearls and crushed seashells into the mix, hoping to create sparkling white effects. Results are uneven but promising, revealing early hints of the multi-hued palette fireworks will one day display. You notice a meticulous monk working on timing fuses, layering paper and wax to delay ignition in precise bursts. His tools include thin brushes and calipers, a hint of engineering precision creeping into this wild alchemical playground. There's talk about the psychology of fireworks too. The monks understand that the build-up, the moments before a firework bursts, can heighten anticipation. Some even argue that a slow, crackling fuse is more magical than the explosion itself. "Patience, young one," a senior monk murmurs. The fire's dance is as much about waiting as burning. Historians still argue whether these insights were intentional or accidental. Did the alchemists consciously design displays for emotional impact, or was it the natural outcome of trial and error? The answer is probably both, wrapped in layers of temple lore and legend. As you observe, you catch a glimpse of the early public shows. Fireworks lighting up festival nights, drawing crowds who gasp and laugh and momentarily forget the hardships of daily life. The fire medicine that began as a quest for immortality has become a fleeting, shared joy, one that connects the earthly and the divine. You linger on a flickering ember, feeling the pulse of a tradition that, while born of chance and alchemical folly, will one day travel far beyond this temple's walls, captivating imaginations across the globe. You're drawn into a corner of the temple courtyard where silence has settled after the night's experiments, the air still warm with the remnants of burned powder and faded echoes of sparks. Here, the monks are reflecting on what they've created, something neither fully understood nor controllable. They're starting to grasp that fire medicine isn't merely a tool or a curiosity, but a symbol. You watch a wizened elder stroke his beard thoughtfully, murmuring about the breath of dragons and the heart of the heavens. To him, these fiery blooms aren't just light, they're messages, prayers even, sent skyward to the spirits. You realize that in ancient China, where the natural and supernatural frequently overlap, fireworks might have held a spiritual resonance beyond what modern science can explain. Yet, the technical challenges remain formidable. One monk is hunched over a cracked clay bowl, carefully adjusting the proportions of saltpeter and sulfur to reduce smoke without sacrificing brightness. The quest for the perfect balance is unending. Too much sulfur and the explosion is harsh and smoky, too little, and the powder refuses to ignite properly. The charcoal must be just right, ground to a fine, consistent powder, but not so fine it clumps and chokes the flame. The workshop buzzes with quiet urgency. Records show early attempts to create silent fireworks, smokeless, almost ethereal sparks that whisper rather than roar. They are elusive, tricky to replicate, and sometimes vanish into myth. A few surviving scrolls hint at a secret mixture, silken powder, whose recipe was fiercely guarded. You overhear the story of a monk who dedicated years to this pursuit, earning the nickname Ghost Flame for his near-silent displays. The legend says his fireworks were so quiet, they startled no one, but left viewers mesmerized by floating embers, like fireflies caught in a dream. Historians debate whether these silent fireworks truly existed or were allegorical, symbolizing the elusive quest for immortality itself. Either way, the narrative underscores a broader truth: the monks were not satisfied with mere noise and flash. They sought nuance, subtlety, control. Elsewhere, a curious invention is gaining traction: the firework wheel. This simple device involves arranging multiple tubes in a circle, connected by a single fuse, so that when lit, the wheel spins rapidly, sending sparks in all directions. It's both spectacle and engineering, combining timing, balance, and an understanding of centrifugal force. One novice proudly demonstrates a prototype, its paper tubes glued with painstaking precision, spinning like a mechanical flower. It's wildly unpredictable, sometimes spinning elegantly, other times veering off course and singeing eyebrows, but it's a glimpse of innovation fueled by curiosity and perseverance. You pause to appreciate the paradox: what began as a pursuit of eternal life has led to something fleeting but spectacular, moments of beauty and awe that vanish almost as soon as they arrive. As dawn edges closer, the monks extinguish their fires, rolling up scrolls and tidying their powders. The workshop grows quiet, but the spirit of invention hums softly, waiting for the next spark. The morning light spills gently over the temple rooftops, casting long shadows as you drift into a small, cluttered study filled with ancient manuscripts and delicate tools. Here, the monks are beginning to organize their knowledge into something resembling a science, a fire medicine treatise that blends observation, myth, and practical advice into a curious hybrid. You notice a meticulously drawn diagram illustrating the three core ingredients: sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter. Each is accompanied by notes on its qualities: sulfur for ignition, charcoal for fuel, and saltpeter for oxygen supply. The text carefully emphasizes the proportions, warning that a slight imbalance could mean disaster, or an unexpectedly beautiful explosion. One manuscript stands out. It's a hefty volume titled The Heavenly Art of Fire and Light, filled with illustrations of bursting stars, spirals, and geometric patterns. The author, an alchemist named Li Shizhen, or so the faded seal suggests, writes about guiding the fire's spirit to produce desired shapes and colors. You suspect this is one of the earliest attempts at codifying fireworks as both science and spectacle. Oddly enough, you find a charming sidebar noting the use of crushed fish scales to add shimmer, something you didn't expect. It's a quirky detail, hinting at a blend of natural materials, some chosen for their chemical properties, others for their aesthetic effect. The text even speculates on whether certain types of fish scales produce a more radiant sparkle, history's earliest firework cosmetics, perhaps. Historians still argue about the extent to which these treatises influenced later Chinese firework innovation. Some believe they were widely circulated among alchemists and artisans, while others think they remained cloistered knowledge, passed hand to hand like secret recipes. The treatise also contains warnings: how to avoid the screaming demons of uncontrolled explosions and the black smoke ghosts that could choke an entire festival crowd. These poetic names for dangers serve as reminders that fire medicine is as much about respect as mastery. As you leaf through the pages, you come across an early recipe for multi-stage fireworks, flowers within flowers, as it calls them, where one burst ignites another, creating a cascading effect. This is a notable leap forward, suggesting an understanding of timing and sequential ignition that feels surprisingly sophisticated. Elsewhere, you see sketches of fire snakes, serpentine ribbons of sparks designed to twist and writhe in the air. These patterns evoke ancient dragon imagery, underscoring the cultural significance wrapped up in these pyrotechnic creations. A playful footnote mentions an attempt to attach fire tubes to kites, hoping to create flying blossoms. The experiment was short-lived, ending in a tangled mess and a few singed eyebrows, but it reveals the boundless creativity and occasional recklessness of these early inventors. You reflect on the sheer curiosity that fuels this work, a desire to control chaos, to create beauty from destruction, to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. The monks are no longer just alchemists chasing immortality, they are artists and engineers, weaving fire into stories and spectacle. The study grows quiet as the monks prepare for the day's labors, the soft rustle of parchment mingling with the distant calls of morning birds. You feel the weight of centuries of discovery and wonder, compressed into these fragile pages, a legacy waiting to ignite. You glide along a dim corridor where the scent of burnt rice and incense lingers, and the walls are lined with jars of various minerals and powders. Here, the monks are delving deeper into the chemistry behind their fiery creations, pushing beyond the basic recipe of sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter. It's the start of experimentation with additives, ingredients meant to tweak color, brightness, and duration. One monk is grinding realgar, a bright red mineral containing arsenic sulfide, hoping to produce a vivid red spark. He handles it with care, aware of its poisonous nature, and mutters about the red breath of the phoenix. Nearby, another monk experiments with copper compounds to coax blue and green hues from the flames, mixing tiny amounts with the standard powder. The risks are real, there's a fine line between beauty and disaster. You can almost hear the collective holding of breath as a test fire is ignited, sending a shower of emerald sparks into the air. It's a success, and the monks exchange quiet congratulations. Yet, the alchemists face constant frustration. Many of these color experiments fail due to impurities or the delicate balance needed to sustain the desired flame color. The struggle to produce reliable, vibrant colors will continue for centuries. Curiously, some monks believe that the colors have spiritual meanings beyond the visual. Red symbolizes life and protection, green is growth and harmony, blue represents immortality, and gold is wealth. This belief system influences not only the choice of additives but the timing of displays during festivals and rituals. Historians still argue how much of this symbolism was practical. Did the monks truly assign these meanings to firework colors, or were these attributions developed later? The answer remains lost in the flickering light of time. Amidst the chemical trials, you notice the evolution of firework shapes. Instead of simple bursts, the monks begin crafting star-shaped and chrysanthemum-like patterns by altering the packing method and shape of the powder inside the casings. This is a step towards the stunning aerial displays that fireworks will become. One particularly quirky note in a forgotten ledger describes a monk attempting to incorporate crushed pearls and mica to produce glittering effects, a primitive form of sparkle. The results were less spectacular than hoped, but the ambition speaks volumes. You pause as the room fills with the sharp crack of an ignition and the scent of burning sulfur. You're witnessing the earliest artistic pyrotechnics, where chemistry meets imagination, and the night sky becomes a canvas. The monks record every success and failure meticulously, their scrolls thickening with formulas, diagrams, and colorful descriptions. This growing body of knowledge marks a turning point. Fire medicine is no longer just a mystical pursuit, it's becoming a craft. You slip away, leaving behind the alchemists and their glowing crucibles, their sparks and dreams mingling with the dawn's first light. You wander into the heart of the temple's courtyard just as the afternoon sun dips toward the horizon, casting a warm amber glow that seems to ignite the very air around you. The monks are preparing for a demonstration, a special display meant to celebrate the success of their latest breakthroughs. The atmosphere is charged with a quiet excitement, punctuated by nervous chuckles and the occasional clink of bamboo tubes being handled with reverence. The display is designed to show off their mastery of timing and color. You watch as carefully packed tubes are arranged in intricate patterns on a wooden frame, linked by thin cords of slow-burning fuse. The head monk explains how they've managed to synchronize multiple bursts, creating a cascade effect where one explosion sets off another in rapid succession, a visual symphony. The first rocket shoots up, leaving a sparkling trail that fades into a brilliant bloom of red and gold. The crowd of onlookers, other monks, temple staff, and a few invited villagers, ooh and ah in delighted surprise. The next tubes follow quickly, bursting in patterns resembling flowers and stars. There's an undeniable magic in the air, an ephemeral beauty that feels almost sacred. You notice a curious detail: some of the rockets produce crackling sounds, while others hiss softly or whistle, a variety of auditory effects that add texture to the visual feast. This experimentation with sound shows the monks' growing appreciation for the multisensory experience of fireworks, not just their appearance. A quirky anecdote surfaces in your mind, a story you heard about a monk who once tried to incorporate dried herbs into the powder mix, hoping to create scented explosions. The results were mixed. Some bursts smelled pleasantly of cinnamon or sandalwood, while others smelled more like burnt socks. Still, the attempt reveals a playful spirit, a willingness to push the boundaries of what fire medicine could do. Historians still debate whether these early sound effects and scent experiments were common practice or isolated curiosities. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, but the idea that fireworks engaged multiple senses centuries ago is fascinating. The display winds down with a grand finale, a slow, rising burst that blossoms into a massive chrysanthemum of golden sparks, illuminating the courtyard like a miniature sun. You can almost feel the heat on your face and the collective awe of the watchers as the light fades to embers. As the crowd disperses, you linger in the afterglow, reflecting on how far these alchemists have come from their initial quest for immortality. The pyrotechnic art they've birthed is transient, yes, but in its brief life, it brings joy, wonder, and connection. You tuck the memory away, knowing these sparks will someday inspire millions beyond these temple walls. Night settles like a velvet curtain, thickening the shadows and softening the temple's edges as you slip quietly into the monks' quarters. The day's excitement fades into a gentle stillness, and you find yourself drawn to a small garden where the scent of jasmine mingles with the faint aroma of embers. It's a place for reflection, a pause between the chaos of invention and the silence of sleep. Here, the alchemists are winding down, their faces illuminated by the last flickers of candlelight and the faint glow of dying coals. You watch as they carefully store away their powders and tools, their hands steady despite the exhaustion etched into their features. The night air is cool and calming, and the occasional cricket's chirp blends with the soft rustling of bamboo leaves. You feel the slow pull of tiredness yourself, your eyelids growing heavy as you listen to the gentle hum of the temple settling into quietude. The scent of the jasmine, the distant echo of earlier fireworks, and the steady cadence of breathing monks create a soothing symphony that lulls your mind into a softer rhythm. The transformation of fire medicine, from volatile experiments to a celebrated art, feels like a distant dream here, in this moment of calm. You realize that what the monks seek, beyond spectacle and science, is a kind of peace, a way to hold the fleeting light steady, if only for a moment. The garden's shadows stretch and deepen, folding around you like a gentle embrace. Each breath you take slows, each sound softens, and the world seems to tilt toward a serene quiet. You think about the stories the fireworks tell, of human curiosity, the dance between control and chaos, and the unending search for meaning in the flicker of flame. These stories float around you, whispering in the dark, encouraging you to rest, to dream. As your thoughts drift, the jasmine scent fades, replaced by the coolness of night, and you feel yourself slipping deeper into calm. The fireworks' brief brilliance becomes a lullaby, and you let yourself float away, cradled by the night. The temple wakes slowly under a pale morning sky, the lingering scent of charred powder mingling with dew on stone pathways. You find yourself drawn to the courtyard again, where the monks have resumed their delicate experiments with new materials and techniques. The day feels charged with possibility, as if the discoveries of yesterday are merely the beginning. One group focuses on improving the casing of fireworks, making them sturdier, more aerodynamic, and capable of longer flights. They use layers of bamboo and paper, testing different shapes to achieve the perfect balance between weight and strength. You watch a small cylindrical rocket being launched. It soars higher and steadier than before, a silent promise of better shows to come. Nearby, a monk is grinding a rare mineral called realgar to enhance the red hues of the explosions. The vibrant color seems to leap from the powder as he carefully mixes it with saltpeter and charcoal, whispering to himself about the fire's soul. The vibrant reds are prized, symbolizing good fortune and warding off evil spirits, a cultural layer that fuels both the science and the spectacle. A quirky side project catches your eye, a series of small fireworks designed to imitate animal shapes, dragons, phoenixes, and even mythical beasts. These require precise packing of powder and careful timing, aiming for bursts that suggest movement and life. It's an early step toward the storytelling potential fireworks will eventually embrace. You overhear a debate among the monks about whether the true magic lies in the visual spectacle or the spiritual meaning behind each display. Some argue that fireworks are prayers in motion, while others see them as celebrations of human ingenuity and the mastery over nature's raw elements. Historians still argue whether these symbolic interpretations were widely held or later romanticized. Either way, the interplay between art, science, and spirituality is unmistakable. As the afternoon sun climbs, you watch a sequence of launches that blend timing, color, and sound, creating an ephemeral dance that captivates the assembled monks. You can almost feel the centuries ahead, where these early efforts will evolve into elaborate displays lighting up festivals around the world. For now, though, it's a quiet afternoon of trial and error, laughter, and the soft crackle of tiny explosions, an intimate glimpse into the origins of a dazzling tradition. You find yourself wandering through a narrow corridor lined with shelves filled with jars of powders, minerals, and mysterious pastes. The monks here are engrossed in refining the chemical formulas behind their fire medicine, pushing the limits of what colors and effects they can coax from their mixtures. One alchemist, hunched over a small clay bowl, experiments with a curious combination, powdered bismuth and copper compounds, hoping to produce an elusive blue spark. You watch the sparks fly from his small test fire, a delicate azure shimmer that dances briefly before fading. The result is tentative but promising, a glimpse into the vibrant future of pyrotechnics. Nearby, another monk carefully layers ingredients to create what they call tail sparks, trailing ribbons of light that follow the main explosion. This is a significant innovation, adding depth and movement to the otherwise static bursts. The technique requires not just chemical knowledge but also an understanding of physics, how powder density and packing affect burn time and trajectory. You overhear a conversation about the origins of the saltpeter used in their mixtures. Traditionally harvested from cave soils and collected from the walls of animal shelters, saltpeter was a precious and sometimes scarce resource. The monks joke about the unpleasant chores involved in gathering it, comparing it to digging for dragon tears. The humor lightens the mood, even as their work grows increasingly complex. Historians still debate how widely the knowledge of saltpeter's extraction and refinement spread outside the temple walls. Some suggest it remained closely guarded, while others argue it circulated among traders and farmers, fueling broader experimentation. Elsewhere, the monks record their experiments in delicate brush strokes on silk scrolls, illustrating not only formulas but also symbolic motifs, dragons, phoenixes, and celestial patterns. These designs reflect a belief that fireworks are not just physical phenomena but manifestations of cosmic energy, a melding of art, science, and spirituality. You pause to admire a small, roughly made rocket, its paper casing adorned with a hand-painted dragon. It's a humble piece, but you sense the immense cultural significance packed into its modest frame. As twilight falls, the monks prepare to test a new batch of powders, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the forge. The crackle of ignition and the burst of colored sparks feel like a whispered conversation between centuries, a shared secret carried on the wings of fire. As the dusk deepens, you stroll through the temple grounds toward a secluded pavilion where the monks have set up their latest workshop, a place dedicated solely to the creation of aerial fireworks. The air hums with anticipation as you observe their intricate preparations, the scent of freshly shredded bamboo and powdered minerals blending into a strangely comforting aroma. The monks carefully assemble fireworks with long, slender tubes designed to shoot high into the night sky before bursting into vivid colors and patterns. One elder explains that they're experimenting with lifting powders, modified mixtures that generate enough thrust to propel the fireworks further and higher than before. It's a delicate balance, as too much lift powder risks an uncontrolled explosion on launch. Nearby, you spot several types of fuses, slow-burning ones designed to delay ignition, and quick-match fuses that spread flame rapidly across multiple tubes. The ability to sequence explosions is evolving, creating complex displays that feel almost choreographed. You hear a story from a monk about an early mishap involving a batch of faulty fuses that caused a whole string of fireworks to ignite prematurely, startling the entire temple with a sudden cascade of sparks and smoke. The resulting firework storm was both terrifying and awe-inspiring, and it's still talked about as a cautionary tale. Historians still debate the extent to which these early aerial fireworks were intended as entertainment versus spiritual offerings. Some suggest that the monks saw the displays as messages to the heavens, hoping to please the gods or ward off evil spirits with their fiery dances. In this workshop, a young apprentice demonstrates the use of new shapes for the firework tubes, cones, spheres, and even star-shaped molds designed to produce distinctive explosion patterns. It's experimentation that borders on art, as much as science. You notice a few tubes dusted with a glittery substance, mica flakes, intended to enhance sparkle effects. Though these early sparkles are subtle compared to modern fireworks, they mark an important step toward the dazzling displays that would captivate audiences for centuries. The monks work late into the evening, their faces illuminated by flickering lanterns and the occasional spark from testing. Each ignition is a step closer to perfecting the balance between lift, color, sound, and pattern. You lean back, feeling the weight of history and invention coiled tightly in the delicate tubes waiting to burst. The night is alive with possibility. You trail behind a group of monks moving toward the outskirts of the temple, where a clearing opens to the night sky. The air is crisp, tinged with anticipation and a faint residue of burnt sulfur. This is the testing ground, an open space where the fruits of alchemical labor meet the unpredictable whims of fire and air. Tonight, the monks plan to test a new series of fireworks, designed not just for height and color, but for shape and narrative. They speak excitedly about flying dragons and celestial flowers, each meant to tell a story in the sky. The air vibrates with their excitement, mixed with a trace of nervousness. Fire can be beautiful, but it can also be dangerous. You notice the careful attention paid to the assembly of each firework. The tubes are wrapped tightly in bamboo and silk, designed to contain the explosive force just long enough to create the desired effect before bursting. The fuse work is intricate, with slow matches connected to time delays, choreographing a ballet of flames and sparks. As the first firework shoots upward, a brilliant trail of gold streaks the sky before exploding into a perfect chrysanthemum of red and green. Gasps ripple through the group. The display is both awe-inspiring and strangely soothing, like watching the sky breathe. Amid the technical success, one curious monk muses about the spiritual significance of the fireworks. Are we merely entertaining, or sending messages to the gods, he wonders aloud. This question echoes an ancient debate that still puzzles historians: were fireworks primarily tools of ritual, entertainment, or something more mysterious? You overhear a quirky anecdote about a firework designed to mimic the sound of thunder, intended to scare away evil spirits during festivals. The effect was so convincing that some villagers reportedly fled their homes, convinced the gods were angry. The monks chuckle, admitting that not every experiment went as planned. The night continues with a series of bursts, whistles, crackles, and hisses, each adding a layer of complexity to the sensory tapestry. The monks document every detail, the timing, colors, sounds, and shapes, building a growing archive of firework knowledge. As you watch the final grand burst, a shower of golden sparks that slowly fades into twinkling embers, you feel the profound connection between these early inventors and the millions who will one day look up in wonder at fireworks around the world. The night sky seems alive, not just with fire, but with the spirit of curiosity and creation. You follow the monks back toward the temple, the afterglow of the night's fireworks still shimmering in your mind. The scent of smoke lingers, mingling with the earthiness of damp soil and fading jasmine. The quiet hum of crickets fills the air as you stroll alongside them, their faces tired but glowing with satisfaction. Inside the temple's dimly lit chamber, the alchemists gather around wooden tables scattered with fragments of spent tubes, powdered residues, and hastily scribbled notes. They exchange observations: what worked, what didn't, which mixtures gave brighter hues, and which fuses failed. One monk recounts the challenge of balancing thrust and stability in their latest rockets. Too much lift powder sends the firework careening unpredictably, too little, and it sputters midair. It's a delicate art that demands patience and precision, not unlike tuning a musical instrument. In a quieter corner, a younger apprentice shares his fascination with the smoke trails left behind by certain compounds. He proposes experimenting with fragrant herbs that might leave a pleasant scent or even change the smoke's color, a playful idea that the elder monks consider thoughtfully. Historians still argue how widespread such sensory experiments were, but this openness to exploration illustrates the monks' blend of scientific curiosity and aesthetic sensibility. You notice sketches on a scroll showing early attempts at multi-stage fireworks, devices designed to burst in one pattern, then launch a secondary explosion, adding layers of complexity and surprise. These innovations hint at the eventual grand displays that will dazzle emperors and commoners alike. The monks' laughter fills the room as they share a story about a failed firework that exploded too early, showering everyone with harmless but startling sparks, an event that earned it the nickname, the mischievous dragon. Their camaraderie brings warmth to the chilly night. You realize that the true magic isn't just in the fire or color, but in the shared passion and persistence that fuel these inventions. It's a collaboration between chemistry, artistry, and spirit. As the night deepens, the monks quietly prepare their materials for the next day, already dreaming of new formulas and patterns to try. Their quest for perfection continues, a flickering flame that refuses to die. You wake to a misty morning that clings softly to the temple roofs, the world wrapped in a gentle gray hush. The air feels cool and expectant, as if nature itself is holding its breath, waiting for what comes next in this long story of fire and discovery. Today, the monks focus on refining the effects of their fireworks to include subtle sounds, pops, whistles, and crackles that add a new dimension to the spectacle. You watch a demonstration of firecrackers, made from small bamboo tubes stuffed with powdered mixtures designed to explode with sharp, staccato bursts. One monk proudly shows how varying the size and packing density changes the sound, creating a miniature orchestra of crackles and bangs. The cultural importance of these sounds is deeply rooted in the belief that loud noises chase away evil spirits and attract good fortune, especially during festivals. You overhear a playful debate about the loudest firecracker ever made in the temple, rumored to have shaken windows and startled even the most stoic monks. It's a quirky piece of lore, though historians still argue whether the tales have been exaggerated over time or are based on actual experiments. Another intriguing development is the use of layered fuses to control the sequence of explosions, allowing complex rhythms to emerge. This is an early form of what we'd now call choreography, where fireworks dance across the sky in timed harmony. You notice the monks recording these auditory experiments alongside their notes on color and flight patterns, slowly building a comprehensive science of spectacle. Nearby, an apprentice shows you a newly devised dragon's tail effect, trails of sparks that twist and curl after the main burst, mimicking the sinuous movement of a mythical beast. The design involves packing the powder in spiral tubes, a technical challenge that requires both skill and patience. Historians still debate how much these early innovations were inspired by cultural symbolism versus pure experimentation. Regardless, The fusion of science and storytelling is clear and compelling. As afternoon fades, you're struck by how these pioneering alchemists have transformed simple chemical reactions into experiences that engage the eyes, ears, and hearts of their audience. You lean back, inhaling the faint scent of burning herbs and powder, and imagine how far this tradition will travel, lighting up celebrations around the world for millennia to come. You follow the monks deeper into the temple's inner sanctum, a space reserved for the most delicate and secretive experiments. The air is heavy with the scent of incense and a faint metallic tang from freshly ground minerals. The alchemists here focus on perfecting color, a pursuit that feels part artistry, part alchemy, and part pure obsession. They show you jars filled with vibrant powders, reds from realgar, yellows from orpiment, greens from copper salts, and even elusive blues from a rare mixture still under refinement. The chemistry is complex. Combining these compounds requires precise ratios, careful timing, and a keen eye for unexpected reactions. You observe a test firework launched indoors, small, controlled, and dazzling. The burst sends out brilliant green sparks that linger briefly in the air before fading. The monks take careful notes, adjusting formulas to improve brightness, duration, and consistency. A quirky tale surfaces about a monk who once tried to add powdered pearls to the mix, hoping to create a shimmering white sparkle. The experiment was more decorative than effective, and pearls proved too expensive for practical use, but it reflects their relentless curiosity. Historians still debate whether the monks' color innovations were shared widely or closely guarded within certain circles. Some argue that secrecy was a form of spiritual protection, while others suggest competitive pride kept discoveries under wraps. The monks also explain the symbolism behind colors: red for good luck and joy, yellow for earth and power, green for growth and health. These meanings add layers of significance to each firework, blending visual delight with cultural storytelling. You notice detailed sketches of color combinations and timing sequences, revealing a sophisticated understanding of how light and shadow interplay in the night sky. Outside, a gentle breeze stirs bamboo leaves, carrying the faint echo of past fireworks and promising many more to come. The room feels charged with possibility, a place where science, art, and tradition fuse to light up the darkness in ways both literal and metaphorical. The evening sky fades into deep indigo as you wander to a quiet corner of the temple where monks are experimenting with the sounds fireworks can make, an often overlooked, yet essential, part of the spectacle. They're exploring how different powder mixtures create whistles, crackles, and booming sounds, turning fireworks into a full sensory experience. One monk demonstrates a whistle firework, explaining how the addition of tiny holes in the casing and the airflow through the tube produce a shrill, bird-like call. You listen as the piercing whistle cuts through the night, eerie and beautiful. It's both musical and mysterious, designed to mimic the sounds of nature and perhaps to communicate with unseen spirits. Nearby, another monk shows you a firework that crackles like rice popping, achieved by embedding small bits of iron or steel powder. The effect is a delicate, sparkling hiss that adds texture to the display. It's a subtle touch that transforms fireworks from mere explosions to complex performances. The monks discuss the cultural significance of sound in celebrations, noting that loud noises are believed to drive away malevolent forces. This tradition endures to this day in many cultures, connecting you to a long human story of sound and ritual. You hear a playful anecdote about a firework designed to imitate the sound of galloping horses, an ambitious project that ended with more sparks than sound, but plenty of laughs. Historians still debate how much these sound effects were intentional versus accidental, but the experiments show a clear desire to push boundaries. The monks' notes reveal a growing catalog of sound effects, each carefully recorded with descriptions and diagrams. They imagine future festivals where fireworks will not only light the sky but sing and whisper stories. You find yourself mesmerized by the blend of chemistry and creativity, how powdered metals and clever engineering can produce sounds that evoke emotion and memory. As you watch the monks light a final whistle rocket, the sharp cry echoes against the temple walls, a haunting reminder of the powerful connection between human invention and the natural world. You step outside into a cool evening, the sky a deep canvas dotted with stars just beginning to twinkle. The monks gather around a fire pit, mixing new powders with the precision of master craftsmen. Tonight, they're focused on enhancing the longevity of fireworks, making bursts that linger longer in the sky, painting slow, shimmering trails that dazzle and mesmerize. You watch as one monk carefully blends powdered charcoal with saltpeter and sulfur, tweaking the ratios to slow the burn rate. It's a subtle science, where even the smallest change can transform a quick flash into a lingering glow. These experiments are a quiet dance of patience and trial. An unusual tidbit emerges about an ancient recipe involving crushed pearls and ground jade, believed to extend the duration of a fireworks glow. While largely symbolic and impractical, it highlights the alchemists' desire to blend mysticism with their craft. Historians still argue how much such exotic ingredients influenced the physical properties of fireworks versus their cultural symbolism. Some suggest the use of precious materials was as much about ritual importance as about function. You notice sketches depicting long, trailing bursts that mimic the paths of falling stars or celestial dragons weaving through the night. These early designs foreshadow the mesmerizing waterfalls and comet tails of modern pyrotechnics. The monks discuss the challenge of balancing slow burns with vibrant colors, as longer-lasting effects often lose brightness. They debate whether persistence or intensity holds greater value in captivating an audience. As darkness settles fully, the first trial begins. A slow-burning firework arcs into the sky, erupting in a cascade of golden sparks that shimmer and fall like a gentle rain. The monks watch in silent awe, their faces illuminated by the glow. You realize that these gentle showers of light carry a different magic, less about the bang, more about the quiet beauty of light lingering in darkness, a metaphor for life and memory. The night hums softly around you, filled with the warmth of discovery and the glow of shared wonder. You drift through the temple corridors, now steeped in a twilight calm, but your senses remain alert to the subtle shifts in the alchemist's craft. Tonight, the focus shifts to safety and containment, a crucial step in transforming fireworks from dangerous curiosities into reliable instruments of celebration. The monks explain how they are developing new methods to reinforce the casings of their firework tubes. Early designs, wrapped in fragile paper and tied with thin silk, often burst prematurely or scattered burning debris dangerously close to the ground. Now, they experiment with layering thicker bamboo casings and incorporating clay coatings to contain explosions better. One elder shares a story about an early accident, an overfilled firework that exploded in the hands of a novice, showering the courtyard with sparks and leading to the nickname, the Fiery Dragon's Tantrum. Thankfully, no one was seriously hurt, but the incident sparked a wave of innovation focused on safer construction. You notice a curious detail: some firework tubes are coated with lacquer, both to waterproof them and to add a smooth finish for easier handling and stacking. The lacquer also helps prevent moisture from ruining the delicate powder inside, a persistent problem in the humid climate. Historians still debate how widely these safety improvements were shared. Some believe that early pyrotechnic knowledge remained confined to select temples, while others argue for a wider spread through military and festival use. You observe the monks testing a new fuse design, wrapped carefully to burn steadily and predictably, reducing the chances of premature ignition. The importance of timing becomes clear. It's not just about the chemistry inside but the choreography of the explosion. In this moment, you appreciate that these developments laid the groundwork for centuries of fireworks displays, transforming a dangerous alchemical experiment into a reliable art form capable of delighting millions. The monks, now relaxed after a long day, share quiet smiles, knowing that their careful work has pushed the boundaries of human ingenuity just a little further. The temple's courtyard is alive with quiet chatter as the monks prepare their latest batch of fireworks for a small, intimate demonstration. Tonight's focus is on color layering, a technique that involves combining different powders in one firework to create multi-hued explosions that shift and change as they unfold. You watch closely as an elder monk carefully layers a red powder base with a thin coating of green sparks, a delicate process that demands steady hands and sharp eyes. The goal is to achieve a burst that transitions from a fiery scarlet core to a shimmering emerald halo, a visual metaphor for harmony and balance. The experiments are not without their quirks. One humorous anecdote involves a batch of layered fireworks that accidentally reversed their color sequence midair, producing an odd, upside-down rainbow effect that had the monks both baffled and amused. Historians still debate how widespread the use of layered color techniques was in early Chinese pyrotechnics. Some argue it was a closely guarded secret of imperial workshops, while others suggest it spread quickly among regional craftsmen eager to outdo each other. You notice that the monks have begun experimenting with timing the bursts of each color separately, using carefully timed fuses that ignite different layers in sequence. It's an early form of pyrotechnic storytelling, turning the sky into a canvas for visual narratives. A quirky detail catches your eye. One monk is trying to incorporate tiny flakes of gold dust to add sparkle to the transitions, though the cost and scarcity of gold make this an occasional indulgence rather than a staple ingredient. As the first multi-layered firework ascends, you hold your breath. It erupts first in a brilliant red core, then slowly blooms into a shimmering green halo, eliciting soft gasps and nods of approval from the assembled monks. You feel a deep appreciation for this blend of science, art, and tradition, where even the smallest powder particles can transform a night into a moment of magic. The sky darkens around you, and the glow from these evolving fireworks paints the faces of the monks with fleeting colors, as if they themselves are part of the spectacle. You settle into the peaceful hum of the temple's evening as the monks begin to craft fireworks designed not only for sight and sound but for scent, a feature rarely discussed but intriguingly explored in their experiments. The goal: to infuse the night air with fragrant trails that linger long after the sparks have faded. You watch as they carefully blend powdered herbs like sandalwood, cinnamon, and even jasmine into the mixtures, aiming to release subtle aromas upon ignition. The process is delicate. Too much organic material dampens the explosion, too little makes the scent barely noticeable. One monk shares a whimsical story of a failed batch that filled the entire courtyard with an overpowering smell of roasted garlic, hardly the romantic effect intended, but memorable nonetheless. Historians still debate how commonly scent was used in fireworks during these early periods. Some believe fragrant pyrotechnics were reserved for special ceremonies, while others argue that the technology to reliably control scent release was too primitive to be widespread. You observe a carefully crafted firework that, upon bursting, releases a gentle cloud of sweet-smelling smoke, barely visible but unmistakably fragrant. The effect is subtle but enchanting, adding a new sensory layer to the spectacle. The monks discuss how scent could deepen the ritual experience, connecting the visual and auditory with the evocative power of smell, triggering memories, emotions, and spiritual reflections. You catch yourself imagining future festivals where crowds not only see and hear fireworks but also breathe in their aromas, creating a fully immersive celebration. A quirky note emerges about an early firework called the perfumed phoenix, named for its floral scent and graceful flight pattern, which, according to legend, was so beloved that emperors requested it for special court occasions. As the fragrant smoke drifts into the night, mingling with the crisp air and soft rustling leaves, you realize that these alchemists were crafting more than explosions, they were weaving moments that touched every sense. You breathe in deeply, savoring the fading scent and the lingering wonder of human creativity. You follow the monks to a quiet, shadowy chamber lined with shelves of powders and scrolls detailing formulas that have evolved over decades. Here, the focus shifts toward improving the rocket's flight paths, making them soar higher, steadier, and with greater precision. You watch as they carefully pack a cylindrical rocket with layered powders, each mixture designed to ignite in sequence to propel the firework upward before the final burst. The engineering is sophisticated, reflecting centuries of trial and error. One monk explains the challenge: too much thrust and the rocket spins out of control, too little, and it fails to reach the desired height. They experiment with bamboo fins and varying the shape of the rocket's nose cone to improve aerodynamics, a primitive form of rocket science. A quirky piece of lore surfaces about a rocket dubbed the flying carp, designed to mimic the shape of a fish believed to swim upstream to victory. The rocket's flight pattern was said to inspire hope and resilience during difficult times. Historians still debate how closely these early rockets resemble modern designs or whether they were more akin to simple aerial shells with unpredictable trajectories. Some suggest that these innovations influenced military technology as much as festive fireworks. You observe a test launch, an elegant arc traced against the dark sky, culminating in a burst of glittering sparks. The monks note the flight path carefully, making adjustments to powder composition and weight distribution. The precision required here is impressive. These experiments bridge alchemy, art, and early physics. Each flight is both a test of human ingenuity and a leap of faith. You feel the palpable excitement of those early inventors, their curiosity propelling them skyward as much as their rockets. As the night winds down, you appreciate how these developments laid the foundation for the dazzling displays that will one day light up cities and inspire all worldwide. You stroll through the temple grounds as a gentle breeze stirs the lanterns hanging from the eaves, their soft glow flickering like fireflies in the night. Tonight's experiment centers on integrating fireworks with light sources beyond just explosions, specifically, the use of colored paper lanterns enhanced by subtle, smoky flares. The monks describe how they combine small, slow-burning powders inside lanterns to produce gentle glows that shift color as the powder smolders. It's an attempt to create a calm, enchanting ambience alongside the usual fireworks' explosive excitement. One monk recalls a festival where lanterns equipped with tiny firework bursts floated along the river, their shifting lights reflecting on the water and creating a magical dance of colors and shadows. The image is so evocative you can almost hear the distant murmur of celebration. A quirky detail emerges. Some monks experimented with embedding reflective minerals inside the lanterns, hoping to amplify their glow. These attempts sometimes resulted in unexpected sparkles or brief flashes, delighting and startling observers alike. Historians still debate how much such early, firework lantern hybrids influenced later lantern festivals and whether these innovations were independently developed or borrowed from regional traditions. You note how this blending of fire and light extended the sensory experience of celebrations, allowing for a more intimate, nuanced form of artistry. As you watch a lantern gently ascend into the sky, glowing softly and trailing a whisper of scented smoke, you feel a profound sense of continuity, how simple innovations ripple outward, inspiring future generations. The monks gather around, sharing stories and laughter, their faces illuminated by flickering flames and a shared sense of wonder. You lean back, letting the soft glow wash over you, a reminder that even the smallest lights can brighten the darkest nights. The temple is quiet now, cloaked in the deep velvet of night, but the alchemists remain awake, their minds alight with new ideas. Tonight, the focus shifts toward the spiritual side of fireworks, how these fiery bursts connect to ancient beliefs about immortality, protection, and the cycle of life. You hear stories whispered about how fireworks were seen as gifts to the gods, offerings of light and sound meant to bridge the earthly and the divine. The bursts symbolize the burning away of evil spirits and the renewal of life's energies. A fascinating tidbit reveals that some alchemists believed the smoke trails from fireworks carried prayers and wishes directly to heaven, a mystical interpretation that adds layers of meaning to each explosion. Historians still debate the extent to which these spiritual beliefs influenced the technical development of fireworks versus their use as festive entertainment. Some argue that ritual purpose was the main driver, while others see it as a cultural embellishment layered on top of practical invention. You watch a slow-burning firework ascend, trailing smoke that curls upward like delicate ribbons, evoking the idea of ephemeral life and the fleeting nature of existence itself. The monks discuss how fireworks became integral to festivals marking important life events, births, weddings, harvests, and how each burst was a celebration of continuity and hope. You feel the gentle weight of history pressing softly against the present moment, as light and shadow play in the night, telling stories older than the temple walls. The flickering flames illuminate faces turned skyward, each person wrapped in the shared experience of awe and connection. You breathe in the cool night air, sensing that these sparks are more than chemistry, they are threads woven through the fabric of human culture, linking generations through light. The night grows deeper, and you find yourself drawn to a quiet space where the monks reflect on how their discoveries might travel beyond the temple walls. The idea that fireworks could become part of larger celebrations, spreading joy far and wide, fills the air with anticipation. You learn that early trade routes, caravans winding across mountains and deserts, likely carried these precious powders and techniques beyond China, sowing the seeds of pyrotechnics in distant lands. A quirky story surfaces about a traveling merchant who tried to smuggle a batch of fireworks hidden inside a carved wooden statue, only for it to accidentally ignite mid-journey, causing panic and laughter in equal measure. Historians still argue exactly when and how fireworks made their way to the West, with some pointing to Mongol invasions and others to Silk Road exchanges as pivotal moments. The monks muse about how their quiet experiments could one day inspire grand displays in foreign courts, illuminating new skies and bringing disparate cultures together through shared wonder. You imagine caravans halting under starlit skies, lighting small fireworks to celebrate safe passage, a universal language of light and joy transcending borders and tongues. As the monks gently pack away their tools, you feel the warmth of human curiosity and connection shining through the centuries. The quiet crackle of a distant firework echoes softly, a reminder that even the smallest spark can kindle great change. You carry this thought with you, a glowing ember of hope and history nestled deep in your mind. You sit quietly as the temple finally settles into silence, the last flickers of light fading into the night. The journey through these ancient experiments has brought you close to the roots of a tradition that transformed celebrations worldwide. The monks share a final story, how their quest for immortality through alchemy ironically led to the creation of fireworks, ephemeral bursts of beauty meant to be savored in the moment rather than preserved forever. There's a gentle irony in that, seeking eternal life, they instead gave us fleeting light. Historians still debate whether the invention of fireworks was more a happy accident or a deliberate pursuit, but one thing is clear, their legacy is a brilliant thread woven into the fabric of human culture. You reflect on how these ancient alchemists balanced science, spirituality, art, and community, turning dangerous chemicals into instruments of joy and wonder. The temple's shadows deepen, but you feel a warm glow inside, the spark of discovery carried forward by every flash in the sky. As you rise to leave, you glance back at the quiet workshop, knowing that this story, of fire, ambition, and celebration, will continue to light the way for generations to come. The night air cools, and the silence wraps around you like a soft blanket, whispering promises of future fireworks and the endless human desire to touch the stars.